Light pollution taken from satellites looks like this for North America. Quite a bit of light pollution in the United States. Here's a slide that shows 4 different images of the United States with reference to light pollution. In the late 1950s, light pollution really wasn't that bad. By the middle 70s, you can see how we start to get those red spots that show lots of light pollution. 1997 is even worse. And look what it looks like in 2025, where light pollution has basically taken over almost the entire United States. Light pollution affects all of us. In southern New England, you can see how in that white area around Boston, and even the white area around Springfield, how the light pollution has adversely affected our environment. The green areas represent areas that don't have so much light pollution. Sky glow is the effect of light pollution on our ability to see stars at night. And there is a Bortle scale that shows in categories what different ratings look like with reference to the ability to see stars at night. On the right, you have excellent dark sky sights where you can see galaxies and the Milky Way. And then on the left side, in inner city, where you might see like 5 or 6 stars, and that's it. Light pollution affects all of us in different ways. There's astronomical observation, which we saw on the last slide, but that also affects medicine. It also affects the ecology, the plants and animals. And we refer to light pollution or obtrusive light as any adverse effect that's caused by artificial light at night. When an outdoor light fixture casts light, usually only a small portion of the light actually goes to the target area that's intended for illumination. Instead, in addition to that, you have a significant amount of light that spills over to other areas where it's really not intended, it's not the target, but nonetheless all of that light gets wasted. First, let's take a look at how light affects plants and animals. Plants and animals are directly affected by outdoor lighting, and here you see photosynthesis and light, and we'll see a slide coming up with reference to leaves on a tree. Feeding, mating, migration cycles are all affected. Many animals are nocturnal. They operate during the night. With bats, it's 100% of them. Amphibians, like frogs, for example, 90%. Then you see mammals and invertebrate and primates like us, anywhere from 30% to, say, 65%. That's a lot. Outdoor lighting has effects on animals. A few examples. Estimated 100 million birds die every year in the United States from light pollution. A lot of birds travel at night and they use stars to navigate, but they get confused when they come to lighted buildings. And it also contributes to thousands of sea turtle deaths every year, where a brand new sea turtle baby, instead of going to the sea, tracks towards the light on the land and doesn't get to the sea and dies. Frogs are another example where they become attracted to the light, and it takes them a significant amount of time, minutes to hours, in order for them to recover from that light. And after being adjusted to the light, the frogs may well be attracted to it. And if you've ever noticed, there's been a diminished number of fireflies that we don't see so much in the summer anymore, because light at night has affected them. There's signaling that takes place between fireflies that gets diminished when you have outdoor lighting. And so stray light can cause a significant impairment in their communication system. Light at night also affects the community ecology. Animals have certain times that they go out after sunset for foraging. And if they don't go out during that time, but instead they think it's a little later because of artificial lighting, it increased the risk that there will be predators out there that will hunt them. And the ecosystem effects, long-term changes, are also in the balance. With sea turtles, they become disoriented when they hatch on the beach. There's artificial light that may be coming from buildings that causes thousands of these little baby turtles to die each year in Florida. And there is a significant marine turtle conservation program there. Insects are responsible for pollinating a lot of what we depend upon in terms of our food chain. But yet with insects are also attracted to light. And if we have too much outdoor lighting and the insects are around the light, they're not pollinating, and as a result their species may die off and not pollinate any longer. 1/3 of all human food requires a pollinator, and many plants and flowers are pollinated by insects, small animals, moths or bats that operate at night. Altering the light conditions at night by putting up artificial lighting can further unravel our web of life, which ultimately disrupts our food sources. Last November, the New York Times Magazine had an article on insect apocalypse, basically showing how insect life is diminishing and maybe vanishing. Here's an example of a tree in the fall next to a streetlight, where all of the leaves have fallen off of the tree except for those leaves that are close to the streetlight, where that light affects the tree all night long. Studies have shown that even a baby that's in the womb of the mother can be affected by light levels that cause the babies to be born with weakened immune systems. This shows that in addition to what we saw in the previous slide, that the light at night can actually affect not only the baby in the womb, but also the babies that are produced by the baby when the baby grows up. So how are the ways that we can limit light pollution? What are they? Well, one thing is we can advocate for street light removal where there are no cyclists or pedestrian activities. We can use light that has short wavelength emissions. We can use motion sensors so that light is only on when it's necessary. We need to use the lowest amount of light that is sufficient for the intended purpose, and maybe sometimes use timers to avoid having the lights on all night long. Here are some alternatives to street lights. Instead of having street lights, you can have flush-mounted LED lighting that's embedded right in the pavement. You can also use retroreflective lane striping, and you can also use signage that has retroreflective paint on the sign. It's highly effective on sections of road where there are no cyclists and are no pedestrians. Limiting the wavelength exposure for LED streetlights and other outdoor lighting to 2700 K puts it in the middle, as opposed to cool white or the incandescent. The shorter the wavelength, which is let's say that 5000 K to 6500 K, the greater the propensity for the light to reflect off of air particulates and come back to the earth as light pollution. In 2016, the American Medical Association published a paper that recommended using streetlights and other outdoor lighting that had a limit of 3000 K, which stands for Kelvin, CCT, and CCT stands for correlated color temperature. It's basically an effect to try to minimize the amount of blue wavelength light, which does no one any good and causes a lot of harm. Some cities, such as Chicago, have a lights out program It's an Audubon program that saves over 10,000 birds a year, and it's usually put in place during the migration season. And here you see pictures of what it's like before 11 o'clock at night and what it's like after 11 o'clock at night, where a lot of the lights have been turned off. New York State also has a dimming program to save migrating birds. They're thought to be confused between the constellations of city lights versus the constellations of stars, causing them to fatally crash. So how can you help? Well, one thing you can do is install proper lighting in your own yard and become an advocate in your town to promote the adoption of outdoor lighting regulations. Urge your city or town to adopt a streetlight master plan, retain warranted street lighting, and eliminate the rest. Lower street light levels to where it's safe, and limit the amount of light to the minimum amount needed. And finally, urge adoption of the Model Outdoor Lighting Ordinance. Finally, consider joining the International Dark Sky Association at www.darksky.org.